And as an adult, they try and punish you.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, I remember I had a conversation with, Mary, and one of my parents, and she was like, don't worry, you're not in trouble. And I was like, I am an adult, A, B, I'm married, C, I have children. I don't get in trouble. Yeah. What are you gonna do? Just make me and put me in my room? This circus used to do this. I don't know if they do it now, so somebody's gonna fact check me. But they used to beat the baby elephant so that when it was big and large and big enough to hurt somebody, it was scared. Isn't that so sad? But you see that a lot in toxic families, in toxic relationships. It's like, well, it's the way that it happens. And I also think that when you become an adult and you start telling people about your experience, like I tell you, or I'll tell Caleb, like poor Caleb, when he came into the family, I'd tell him stories and he'd be like, that's not normal.
Right.
And I think that's when I first started to be like, wait a second, this dynamic isn't so normal.
For 2 years, you followed me down so many rabbit holes, chasing the secrets hidden away in dark places no one thinks to investigate. The closets that families fill to the brim, exploding with mysteries. But now, my life is undergoing major changes. A new country and a new closet to explore. Welcome to Rabbit from the Closet, where the secrets don't stay hidden for long. Oh my God. Every time I come up here, it starts to rain and thunder and lightning. If you've been wondering where the rest of the chapters are, this is what's going on. I cannot control the amount of flooding we have going on here. And I mean, it's beautiful to listen to. Sometimes I fall asleep in this chair, just waiting to be able to make a video for you. And then when I wake up, my kids are home, so I can't do it. Sound is just unbelievable. All right, so here we go. I'm back the next day when the rain has stopped early in the morning. I'm trying to go back and take a look at chapters 7 through 12. And for me, these are really important chapters in the book because this is it's a little bit of a redemption arc for Kody and Christine's relationship. The first 6 chapters made me really sad, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, you get this feeling that from moment number 1, from the moment that Christine stepped onto the wedding aisle to march down and meet Kody, he was not excited to see her. And it's really sad to think about Christine living the kind of life where she wasn't appreciated at all. In the first 6 chapters, we really get this feeling that Kody was not excited about this marriage. He was overwhelmed, overworked. He had 2 wives who were bickering with each other. One was pregnant and getting ready to have his first child, and Christine was kind of added on as an afterthought. It was really difficult to read those chapters and wonder to yourself, like, why did she stay in this marriage for 20 years? But for the next 6 chapters, we get a better feeling about why Christine felt like she wanted to make this work. You know, a lot of the driving force behind her believing that ultimately this was a good relationship for her. Welcome back to Rabbit from the Closet, where we pull out the secrets that were never meant to stay hidden. In Christine Brown's story, chapters 6 through 12 take us to a turning point where the shadows of pain and doubt begin to give way to a surprising redemption arc. Behind the closet doors, we see Christine and Kody trying to rebuild what was once broken, piecing together fragments of love and trust. But these chapters aren't just about Christine and Kody. They also reveal how Christine navigated her complicated relationships with the other wives, sometimes supportive, sometimes strained, but always shaping the woman she was to become. And I shared the first clip where Maddie, Janelle's daughter, is talking about Mary because there's a big portion of these chapters devoted to Christine's relationship with Mary, and it is very insightful. So tonight, as we open the closet a little wider, we'll uncover the secrets of healing, connection, and resilience hidden in this part of Christine's journey. Chapter 7, She Was Hurt, I Was Hurt. So this is about the very beginning of Christine's relationship when Janelle first gave birth to Logan. So it's the first child. And I can kind of understand, I have brought up before on this channel that if we want to look at Christine and Mary and Janelle and all of the females in this organization as being victims of some of the issues with patriarchy, I think we can also look at Kody as being a victim at times of that patriarchy as well. So he seems to have this idea that it's important for him to keep taking on wives. And we know that that's very much supported by this religious organization. And yet he didn't have the money, he didn't have the finances, he didn't have the emotional girth to take care of all of these women. They're living in a trailer. Janelle is pregnant, about to give birth to Logan, and he marries Christine. And from what we've heard from him, it was about the prestige she was going to bring to the family. What pressures did Kody have on himself to bring Christine along into this chaos? I can imagine that a lot of people are like, this is a good marriage for you. You need her on your side. So in this chapter, Christine actually goes into some interesting information about kind of like her holistic background, the way that she has, it's kind of been passed down through generations, and she has a belief that she should go ahead and try to be more natural in childbirth. She gives birth to her children at home. She loves all of her pregnancies. She raves about this in chapter 7. One thing that she talks about that I think is really sweet, she mentions each individual child over the next couple of chapters, and she talks about how when she was pregnant with that child, she believes that she took on the personality that child was eventually going to have. So with Aspen, the very first child that she gives birth to, she says, when I was pregnant with Aspen, I was chill. I was newly married and I was excited about being pregnant, but I was also oddly reasonable, not like myself, but very much like Aspen is today. She gave birth to Aspen in her grandmother's house. And she talks about how this is a tradition in her family. They always have their babies at home with a midwife. And she says this is so they don't have to deal with people asking questions about who the father is. Kody was traveling often for his job at this point in time. And she does reminisce about having to be incredibly independent. She says that this was bred into her because, quote unquote, how could Kody care for all of them? There's too many wives. Really sad to hear that, right? I mean, this is going back to what we heard in chapter 6, where we feel a sadness for Christine that she had very lowered expectations about what a spouse was going to be in her life. She talks about taking herself to all of her own prenatal appointments, and she tells a story about getting stuck in a snowdrift, coming home from an appointment on a mountain, and Kody wasn't with her, and she ended up pulling over and asking a guy for some help, and he was like, you'll be fine, just get behind a diesel engine on your way up or something. And she says it was just hard. Looking back now, she wonders how she did it. It's scary. She would want to protect her own children from going through some of this, but she was on her own, and she believed that being independent was a very good thing for her. She does talk extensively about how, quote unquote, incredible Kody was as a birth partner in the home. Now, I can believe this because I can see how this would be very performative for Kody Brown. And if there's one thing he's good at, I believe it's putting on a performance. When he knows he only has to be there for 24, 48 hours to help you get through a birth and then he's done, I could see him turning on the charm during that period of time. And that's basically what she describes in this chapter. She says that Kody always showed up for her during the birth of the children, and he was a very good partner to have. He was supportive of her, kind, pushing her to go the extra mile to give birth. And, she was giving birth in the home, and she really appreciates that he was a part of every one of her birth stories. Chapter 8, The Most Magical Moments. This chapter is where we really see Christine letting us in on the fact that there are specific reasons why she felt in love with Kody. And there were good times in the marriage as well. And she's been able to say, I don't regret my past. I love my children. I love some of the experiences we have. And in this chapter, we hear about how important it was to Christine when Kody finally chose her out of all the wives to attend a conference with him. Okay, so I've always been wondering, like, what was Kody doing before he ended up becoming a salesperson for guns and ammunition? So back in the day, according to Christine, quote unquote, Kody sold educational and entertainment DVDs and other products about the Book of Mormon. I find this really interesting. Like, did he really believe he was going to be able to support 3 wives and 18 children? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there is like a huge need for people to buy from like a random salesman products about the Book of Mormon. I find it really hard to believe that this was a career that was taking him anywhere. And I find it interesting, that Christine seems very proud of this because, according to Christine, Kody won a competition for selling these products. And he got to go to the LDS historical site of Navajo to sell his DVDs because he won the competition. And she believed this was going to be a big financial windfall for their family. And he chose her to go with him. This is a big event in Christine's life. And it's hard. I wobble back and forth between being like, oh, I get it, like, good for you, Christine, and also being like, this is sad. This is like the breadcrumb that he gives her. But it's important to Christine because they get to spend 2 weeks together alone, only they take Aspen and McKelty with them. So they have toddlers in a small hotel room with them. She writes, we stayed in a tiny hotel room and it was so much fun. I spent the whole time finding things for McKelty to do because she was curious about everything. Cutest and busiest little kid. Aspen was a little charmer as a toddler. Our last day in Navajo, Kody introduced me to a co-worker as his wife. And she asks, has he met Mary? He hadn't. Mary had gone to Kody's work parties back home, but the Navajo guys hadn't met her. I remember thinking it was so cool that he'd introduced me to them as his wife. It didn't happen often. So this was a big part of Christine's feeling in that moment, like she was chosen, finally chosen by her husband, like 3 years into being married to him, because I think Aspen was 3 at this point in time, and they're staying in this tiny hotel with their toddlers. It makes me really like review my own life, where I had much higher expectations for my husband. I would have been like, I'm not staying in this tiny hotel with 2 kids. It's too much. But this was something that Christine really appreciated. She was very happy and excited that she got to do this with Kody. Okay, now as they were driving home from this conference, I guess Kody really liked how Christine had helped him out and been a good partner to him during this time. And Christine writes, Kody later told me he looked at me as we drove home from that trip and realized he was in love with me. Now, this was wonderful for Christine, but it was also hard to hear because she was like, I fell in love with you before we got married. And basically hearing that it took Kody 3 years to really get it, it was hard for her. And yet she accepted it, and she ended up changing her idea of what love really is. Do you hear the rain? It's coming. Dear Lord. I should just go out and have it pour down over me while I record for you guys. Okay, so Christine ended up changing her idea of how love works. She started to say, maybe love is slow. Maybe you fall in love over your shared story, over your experiences. I remember telling my brother I thought Titanic the movie was dumb because that's not how love happens. I told him there's no such thing as instant love or love at first sight. No one falls in love like that. Romantic, huh? Now, I kind of get it. I think that there's a lot to be said for either side of the story. Yes, I think that a lot of people, it's good to take the time to get to know each other, spend time together, and fall in love over shared experiences. There's a lot of validity to that. I also believe that love at first sight could be a real thing, and maybe that's not what Kody experienced. But I don't discredit their love story at all. And we're going to take a break here because of the rain. Okay. So even with all of this going on, the sister wives are continuing to struggle financially. And I find this part of the chapter really interesting because it turns out that Kody and the wives were all open to welcoming another wife. And they were actively looking for someone. There was a young woman in their church, about 19 years old, who had expressed interest in Kody, and they basically started courting her until... This is a very interesting part of the story. Kody went to the head of their church, who happened to be Christine's grandfather, and the grandfather laid down the law. He said to Kody, look, I happen to know that you're not taking the best care of your current wives, so please don't try to take another one. I'm not going to allow it. And Kody And it sounds like Kody was a little bit like, what? Long story short, Christine lets us know that she found out that her mother, who she had kind of a like a difficult relationship with, we've already talked about that in earlier chapters, had gone to the grandfather and let him know, like, look, Kody does not have the finances to take on any more wives. He is not taking financial care of the 3 wives that he has. Christine asked her mother, like, why Kody had been turned down by the grandfather, and she let her know. She said, look, I told grandpa the truth. Kody is not financially able to even take care of the people that he has with him right now. And Christine writes, fair. I think back then, she was a little frustrated with her mom about giving that information out, but it's quite interesting to hear that the higher ups in the church were actually trying to protect Christine a little bit, protect the other women in the family. They weren't just like, sure, take on another woman. Here's another woman for you. They were like, literally, you need to find a better way to financially care for your wives before you take on any additional females in that home. Christine also talks a little bit about Peyton's labor. I found this really interesting because she says at the end of giving birth to Peyton, Janelle came in and held him, and he opened his eyes and looked right at her. They have had the closest bond since that first moment. So we kind of get some information and background as to Christine's bonding towards Janelle. Janelle ended up being really close to Peyton, and this was perfect for Christine's situation because Peyton was the only boy in the family, and he needed other brothers to hang out with, and he was able to get that from Janelle's house. And this kind of continues to uphold Christine's belief that it's really good to have these sister wives because it makes a bigger family and we're all in this together. She talks about how they continue to live in these really small homes, and I think it's hilarious that most frequently Janelle and Christine would wind up with smaller areas, smaller rooms, smaller apartments, and it was mainly because they took the smaller rooms and smaller apartments to get further away from Mary. Christine flat out states that they would sacrifice anything to basically be away from Mary because she was so freaking controlling. Christine writes, in the tiny space, Mary's rules grew even stricter. I don't care how towels are folded. They go in the drawer and they're folded. In fact, I don't care if they get folded at all, as long as they end up in a drawer. We went through towels so quickly, we barely had time to fold them. I don't care if kids play in the Tupperware cupboard or make a mess. I don't care if they eat all the food on their plates or take 3 bites. You should have consequences for your actions, but I'm more casual with my parenting style. When we all lived together, Janelle and I, as well as our kids, followed stricter rules to keep the peace with Mary. But also, because when you have so many people living with you, kids can't make messes all the time. It was chaos. Okay, so this is where Christine talks about, she just really starts laying the foundation for dealing with Mary. It was incredibly hard. She was difficult to get along with. She should not have been with other women in this house, especially in a small area. She was incredibly controlling. Christine talks about how she used to, in this specific situation, close the door to her bedroom so Mary wouldn't see that she was letting the kids jump on the bed for fun, because Mary would have freaked the F out about it, let's be honest. Christine also talks about a situation that I find really interesting and speaks to the psychology of what was going on with Christine in the background. When she goes to apply for a job at a local museum, she does the interview, and the person who is interviewing her asks her questions like, do you have somebody to watch your kids? And she says, yeah, I do. I have all these sisters that can watch my kids. She basically lies about her situation, not making it clear that she's from a family of polygamy. She goes out, leaves the interview, thinks it goes well, but when she gets to the parking lot, she starts crying because she's unhappy that she had to lie. She doesn't feel good about lying to this person. She marches right back into the museum, meets up with the interview, and tells her, look, I need to let you know, I was lying to you in that interview. I don't like to talk about it, openly, but I actually come from a polygamous family. The people I was speaking about aren't my sisters, they're my sister wives. She later got hired, and she said that was one of the best jobs she ever had. But I think this is further indicative of the fact that Christine cannot stand to live a life of secrets and lies, and she's still being forced into it at this point in time. At the end of this chapter, she has a lot of really positive memories about holidays, specifically Thanksgiving. She talks about how they all got together, they came together, and all the wives had their specific jobs. Mary always made the turkey. I don't know if you remember this from the seasons, but it was a huge deal when Robyn finally got to make the turkey in one of the last seasons. Mary was very controlling, and that was her part of the meal. But Janelle and Christine came together over doing the sides. They ended up like really enjoying making pies together. So we see some of the relationships coming closer, but also establishing these ongoing problems in the relationships. Mary is always who she is. She's not bending, she's not folding, and she's being treated like she's the head wife. And they are often having to give in to her decisions, her desires, her needs. For Christine, this is mainly about, all of these holidays are mainly about upholding the many traditions they created together as a family, and she looks back on them fondly. It's clear that this is a big part of her lack of regret over the relationship. She's glad that her kids have all of these really special memories. It's here that she tells a really touching story about Garrison. As many of you are aware, this is the reason why I stopped watching The Sister Wives. I did not like how they kind of glossed over so far. They've glossed over, they haven't really spoken out about what happened with their child. And it's very difficult to continue to watch the show knowing that he's gone. We all really cared about him. This is a really amazing story about Garrison. I think it has to do with Christmas. It may have been Thanksgiving, but Garrison decided that he wanted to make an elaborate graham cracker train. And he tried forever to try to get I've done this with my own kids. I'm sure you have too. He tried forever to try to get everything to stick together with the icing. He was trying, it was breaking apart. He was crying. He was so sad. And finally, Christine whipped out the hot glue gun and she was like, look, Garrison, we're going to hot glue this puppy together. And Garrison was like, no, but we won't be able to eat it. And Christine said, you know what? We're going to put some graham crackers aside. Everyone can eat those, but we're going to make this work. And they made this massive graham cracker train to go on the table. And Garrison ended up making all these little cottages, one for each of the kids. And this is a very special memory for Christine. Once again, these are the reasons why she doesn't regret, the life that she had with Kody and all of the memories that she has for her children. The wives were living separately at this point in time. Christine was in they had like a piece of land. Christine was in a small ranch house. Mary had her own house somewhere else on the land. And I believe Janelle had a house in town. It's very interesting how they worked things out. And at this point in time, Christine was working her museum job, but also homeschooling the kids. This was passed down through generations. And while she really enjoyed doing it, she talks about building an Incan empire in their backyard, complete with canals and homes. She realized that her kids were behind in certain ways. Like Mykelti was struggling with reading, and she knew that maybe she wasn't the best one, the only one to be teaching these children. And meanwhile, another woman in their church started to show like pretty strong attraction and interest in Kody. According to Christine, this woman was calling all the time. And Christine was very angry about this. This is a look into how Christine views how marriage and polygamy should be done. She became incredibly irritated with this woman because she wasn't following the rules as Christine saw them for a polygamous family. She says that while she was courting Kody, calling him, flirting with him, she never paid any attention to the wives. She wasn't creating a relationship with them. And because of this, Christine was pissed. She was angry. And one day, the woman called in the middle of the day to speak to Kody, and she was really sick of it. And she finally grabbed the phone and told her, don't call back. You have not gone about this the right way. You are not doing things the way that they're supposed to be done. The wives will never accept you, and I don't want you to call this number again. She says that now she looks back on it and feels badly because the girl was young and, she's kind of like, who was I to do all this? But she says it's good news that this woman is happily married now. This serves to remind us that Christine had strict ideas in her upbringing about how things were supposed to go down. Now, we saw this when Robyn came into the family. We're going to talk more about that later, but Christine liked that Robyn did follow some of the rules. And here she completely shut down a relationship for Kody because she did not like that the girl was not putting the wives first. Christine reminisces about how for her, as she was living through these experiences with Kody, Mary, and Janelle, she always remembered what good friends her grandfather's wives were, how they had become soulmates, and after he died, they took care of one another and lived together. And she really felt like her grandfather was good at making each wife feel like she was the favorite and so special to him, and they were so happy, according to Christine, throughout their lives and at the end of his life. And she really wanted this for the future, so it continued to support the idea that she just had to get through the bad times, and eventually this would all be worth it for all of them. During special times when Christine would have a birthday or something special was happening, but maybe an anniversary with Kody, she would ask for things like, he would be like, what do you want for your birthday? And she would say, you want to go on a drive and make out? And pretty frequently, or maybe all of the time, Kody's response was like, no. I don't want to do that. But she did feel like he was attentive in other ways. For example, at one point, she lost the diamond in her wedding band, and he took her out. She requested that she go with him. They went out together and had what she describes as a wonderful day together, which is a very happy memory for her, picking out a new wedding band. She thinks that this was a time in which Kody showed a lot of caring and concern for her and made her feel really special to him. One of the main things Christine emphasizes in these chapters is that Kody was a good dad. Although he was often gone for work, on the weekends he'd always be doing something with the kids, and she writes that usually meant yard work, but they also helped Mary build her house. The kids loved being around him. They all had little tool belts just like Dad. He was fun, and I loved to watch him with them. We would pull up all the weeds in the garden, then bundle up for bonfires. We always had one for Garrison's birthday because he was a bit of a pyromaniac, and Kody would let him light the fire. I really like how Christine is adding in pieces of Garrison's memories here. I think that that's really important, and I feel like it's her way of acknowledging that this is a massive loss in their life. Christine writes, you can only light 3 matches, Janelle would tell Garrison, and you have to do it with an adult. As we gathered wood for the bonfire, 6-year-old Garrison would stare at the cupboard where we kept the matches. Finally, I would get the matchbox for him, and he would take it to Kody. Kody would let him hold the box and light the fire. It was adorable. He loved to light the bonfire. On the weekends, we played. If it snowed, we had snowball fights and went sledding. We'd go for drives and to Kody's dad's ranch. We tried to set up piñatas a few times, but our kids were really aggressive, waving the sticks around. There's just a lot of really good memories here, a lot of positive situations, especially for Christine when it comes to her children. And I think this is a big part of the happiness she has when she looks back at her life. So Christine really loved this time in Wyoming where they all lived together but had separate houses, and they could go visit Kody's family all the time until Kody got a job in Utah. Now this is where Christine gets kind of upset. It's one of the first moves where she stands up for herself and says, we're happy here. I don't want to leave. Why would we move everything for one person? You're the one person who wants to go. And Kody said, I'm doing this for our family and we need to go. He set out a plan for them to live in Utah for about 4 years, and Christine said, I don't care if the finances will be better there, we're happy here. And Kody was flat out like, we need to move. This is about bettering our lives. It's clear that they had diverging paths at this point in time. Christine was very dedicated to just having family around, being in a loving environment, and Kody was more dedicated to improving their lot in life. Chapter 9, it was a bummer. So Christine finally agreed to move to Utah with one circumstance, and that was that the kids could attend the fundamentalist church school that was run in the Lehigh area where they were going to live. Now, in order to do that, Christine had to teach at the school, and she was willing to do that, but she realized that her kids needed to be around other people and catch up in a lot of ways. She says that once they entered the church school, it was so good for the kids. They had new friends to be around, and they were sheltered by people who were a part of their faith. They could speak openly. She talks about I think it was Logan being really surprised that he was able to say to other classmates, I have 3 moms. And they were like, I have 2 moms. I have 4. And Christine said, yeah, this is a polygamous school. Everybody here is polygamist. And Logan felt like a huge weight off his shoulders, like he did not have to lie about his origin anymore. And this was really important to Christine. And because she taught at the school, she was always there when the kids needed anything. She was a big part of taking care of Janelle's kids. And, Mary's child, Leon, also attended the school. So she got to be a big part of everyone's lives. And she says that she has a lot of really amazing memories from that time, especially of the time Kody spent with her and her kids leading up to starting the show and marrying Robyn. This was a good time for her. It was a hard time for Janelle, and she doesn't want to talk much about it, but she says for a period of time, Janelle did move away, ended up moving back in with her mom. Eventually, they all moved into the house that they live in during the first season of Sister Wives, where Christine lived in the basement. Again, Janelle and Christine were very much about getting away from Mary. She does say for a period of time while Janelle was gone, she and Mary were friends. They even worked as counselors at a girls' camp together through their church for several years. And she really enjoyed that. But as time went on, little things, continued to drive them nuts about each other. And eventually, Christine had a major falling out with Mary. She writes, Mary's place on the floor above me was pristine and had a lot of breakables, and I felt like she reacted harshly when the kids roughhoused, so much so that I didn't want my kids around her. At her place, they could count on doing something wrong, and even as she had an abundance of rules for us to follow about folding towels or whatever, she played her country music so loud that we could hear it throughout the house. It didn't matter if a baby was napping or if Janelle and I were trying to catch up on sleep or spending time trying to quiet down a kid. So I can totally see this about Mary. I'm sure most of us can. Of course, Mary would have rules for everyone else, rules for thee, but not for me. She still did what she wanted to do, but the world revolved around her. We can see this in later episodes about Mary. Like, I could not stand it when she insisted that she get the exact same size, if not bigger house than all the other wives and get all this special stuff in Las Vegas. It drove me crazy. You only have one child. If you really, really cared about this family, and I know that it is within their whole church system that everything has to be equal, but I'm sorry, you only have one child. If it was me, I absolutely guarantee you, if it was me in that situation, I would be like, I don't need the same size house as Janelle and Christine. It was something that always really bothered me. It ended up being that Christine felt she could no longer trust Mary. They had a major falling out because she couldn't trust what Mary would say, particularly in front of other people. Christine writes, Mary said demeaning things about me when she was with her family, in front of me. My weight, my intelligence, my parenting skills. We would be laughing and telling stories, but then she'd throw a painful dart and I would feel myself deflate. This makes perfect sense to me. I believe that Mary has a lot of complexes going on. She's very codependent, specifically with her daughter. She wants to be codependent with Kody, and she has a very weird relationship with her sister wives, especially Robyn. It's quite strange. She really wants to pull people in and smother the shit out of them. For sure. We've seen that on all of the seasons. And it makes sense to me that in some ways she would have been quite the type of person who doesn't really feel good about herself and makes herself feel better by picking on something about Christine that she can emphasize, is not the best. It isn't the standard of beauty, or it isn't what polygamy says you should be. So it makes perfect sense to me that Mary would be this kind of person who backstabs people like Christine. Christine writes, the dynamics of polygamous parenting can feel like a seesaw, and Mary, even with one child to care for, was the top wife in our polygamy pyramid. We followed her rules when she was around to keep the peace, but her rules felt punitive and unfair. I had to make a decision about what was best for me and my family within a family, and it changed our relationship forever. Now she writes about what happened with McKelty one day that really set her over the edge and made her realize she would never have a close relationship with Mary. She writes, one day the kids went to the store. Mykelti, who was about 8, went up to the cash register and she was maybe 10 cents short. It was little kid stuff. She was probably buying candy. The cashier who knew us spotted her the dime. No big deal. But Mary's Leon, who was also just a little kid, maybe 9, told Mary about it, and Mary lost her mind. This makes perfect sense to me as well, because of course Mary had an inappropriate relationship with Leon, flat out. She was so codependent with her one child. She probably told Leon, like, whenever you go out, you better tell me what those kids are up to. If you see something that they're not supposed to be doing, you let me know, because I'll take care of it. And Leon kind of created this aura of like, she's better than everyone else. She's in charge of everyone else. I really saw that when she was younger. I liked her as a kid, and I still like her now, but we can see how some of this has played out in some mental health issues, which Leon has talked about. And the continued ongoing need of Mary to make sure she's like number one in Leon's life is really weird to me. So Mary was mad that Mykelti had embarrassed her in front of the cashier and that she had embarrassed Leon. She yelled at Mykelti, who couldn't understand what she had done wrong, and I couldn't either. That was the day after a series of 2 similar experiences I ended my friendship with Mary. I'd had enough, and my mama bear came out roaring. "Don't talk to my kids," I yelled. "I don't want you near them. I don't want you to come downstairs anymore. Our relationship is done." And I mean, this held true for quite a long time. They did get along in front of the kids and the family for the sake of everyone, but Christine calls it extremely superficial, that she knew she was never going to have a soul sister kind of relationship with Mary. Flat out, they were not going to be close. During this time, Janelle was working full-time, so Christine did feel very alone. This is where Christine goes on to talk about some of the more salacious things, which many other creators have brought up in a lot of their videos or short TikToks. And this is a small part of the book, but it is important. Christine goes on to talk about how sex had become kind of meh for her and Kody. M-E-H, meh. Christine writes that here in the book, and she says one major issue that she had with Kody is that he required a back massage, which would eventually turn into a full body massage, but he never offered to return the favor. She said that she asked him to, and he basically said, "It's not a turn on for me." Well, fuck you, Kody Brown. I just can't believe that these women had to go through this. Kody definitely is the kind of person, much like Mary, where it's like, me, everyone take care of me. Christine describes never really having any kind of foreplay with Kody, as she spent a lot of nights crying, and she began to start to think that there was something wrong with her. Kody would not take his time with her. Like, he might skip the night he was supposed to have with her. And he ended up literally saying to Christine, "The reason why is because I move away from pain and towards pleasure," he told her. And Christine thought, am I pain? Does my pleasure matter at all? I think this was the downfall of Christine having happiness in that family. The intimacy was really lacking with Kody before Robyn came along, and we're going to hear how it got much worse once Robyn showed up. Chapter 10, the LDS Church's Bastard Children. Both of my grandparents were precinct heads of our church and well known within our community, as well as the non-polygamous community. But people didn't know about me or my family situation. The Kody Brown family lived as openly as possible while trying not to get fired or arrested. Because I worked for the church, I was less worried about getting fired, so I could be outspoken about our situation. This chapter is all about what I've talked about extensively on my channel, because many people don't know about it. Christine was extremely outspoken, and she is the whole reason why Kody and the sister wives got involved with the TLC show in the first place. She was an advocate for polygamy. Christine ended up getting involved with a very influential group called the Principal Voices. It was a pro-polygamy group, and they were part of a coalition of people from each group that lived plural marriage, and they wanted to educate the outside world about what polygamy is and move towards changing the laws about polygamy so people could be out front letting everyone know how they live their lives and be honest about their situation. This was incredibly important to Christine. I think this is what her whole purpose was during this period of time. She devoted herself to this group, and she became quite popular among people who were aware of the desire for people within polygamy to move out of the shadows. Now, she only used her first name, Christine, when she would go out and do these speaking engagements. She still had to be careful. And of course, Kody, he couldn't come along. That's the person they were most terrified of being arrested for participating in having this kind of family structure. But Christine went out there and she was speaking at universities, hospitals. She was talking about who she was, who her family was, and why she wanted the laws to change. She ended up meeting with some lawmakers, the general attorney, and even the governor. Christine is amazing. And while the other wives were working and Kody was out there, selling his Latter-day Saints memorabilia, she was trying to make a real difference in the world of advocacy. She believed that women would be safer, that they deserved to be recognized as real wives, and that it would protect them because, and she writes, women have essentially no rights in polygamous divorces. The polygamous wives will never report abuse if their marriage is a federal crime. The men deserve to be recognized as husbands who provide for large families rather than guys having illicit love affairs. This was really important to her, and she believed that actually abuse within the society would lessen once people could step forward and bring things to law enforcement if there was actual abuse going on. But as of right now, everything is happening in the shadows, and it's scary for women who want to come forward. All right, so here's where the wheels start turning, because in 2009, there was a New York City group that wanted Christine to come and do a talk show. So the pilot was going to be filmed with an MSNBC news anchor. They did film it, but it didn't actually air. But because of what Christine did, the anchor went forward with trying to help her and her family get involved in another show. At first, they went to HBO with the initial Sister Wives show, but in the end, they settled on going with TLC. So it was Christine. I just can't emphasize this enough. I feel like it isn't talked about at all. It's Christine that got this family the show, and she did it for reasons of wanting to be an advocate for her family and for the people who have grown up in her religion. Christine writes, "We realized this would be a great opportunity for us to show that a polygamous family isn't all about control, patriarchy, teen marriages, and abuse. In other words, what people saw in the newspapers and on the evening news. There was still one problem. We could lose our jobs. We'd seen it happen again and again. We told Tim, who's the guy who's helping them with the project, we would need it to be more than just a documentary. So they're kind of thinking, if we lose our jobs, we need this to be like a steady income for us, even if it's just for a season. So Tim did pitch the series to HBO, but they ended up going with TLC, and they were really excited about all of it. Chapter 11, you have to meet her. Okay, so in the background, they have this show. It's 2009. They have this show that's getting started. But in the background, Mary and Janelle are weirdly open to letting another wife join the family. Christine says she doesn't really know why. She wonders if it was because Christine had stopped acting as a go-between between Mary and Janelle, and maybe they were starting to feel like if we get another person into this family, they can help make things better. Christine was not interested in having another wife. She points out that finances were still tight despite canning, extra jobs, bulk shopping, and there were a lot of sentimental reasons for Christine as well. She talks about how all of the wives had raised their children together. Now the kids were older, and it seemed like it would be really hard to start over with someone who didn't share any of the memories they had as a family. But surprisingly, Janelle and Mary were really into it. She says every day after church, both Mary and Janelle would say things like, "What do you think about her? How about her? What do you think?" Christine said, "I think we're fine. I think our family is just fine." And they were in talks with TLC about doing this show. So, Christine's like, we have a lot coming up. We don't need another wife. But then Kody and Mary went on a date at a church event. After meeting Robyn there and talking with her, Mary was ready for Robyn to join the family, like after one night. And this is where I find Mary to be fascinating psychologically. I don't want to say too much because it's not my place to, make a bunch of suppositions about what's going on with Mary, but it's like she was the one who found Robyn, grabbed onto her, and pulled her into this family. Clearly, Robyn was like, what? You have a TLC show coming up? Yes, I'll take that. Thank you, ma'am. They each had their reasons for why they wanted to be around each other, Robyn and Mary. Now, Mary started saying to Christine, you have to meet her. She said this on repeat and constantly talking about Robyn. I find it interesting that Christine writes, Kody initially said he had some concerns. Robyn, who was 30 to Kody's 40, had been married before and had 3 children when she met Kody. And she had like a very contentious divorce that had just happened a few months within the year before she met Kody. She was apparently falling in love with Kody, and this was kind of hard. Kody, it's amazing to me that Kody was kind of pulling back on it, and Mary was like, no, she's getting in this family right now. Now, Christine writes that even though it was hard to watch this and she didn't want another wife around, some things started to come up which made her believe that maybe Robyn was right for their family, especially biblically. I really get the sense that it's all about the fact that she believes there's a prophecy coming that's telling her Robyn should be a part of their family. First and foremost, Robyn was okay with filming the courtship for the TLC show. So everyone was like, this is a great idea. She didn't run away from being on the show. And Christine seemed to think this was like, they were really grateful that she was like this. Of course, she didn't run away from being on the show. That's why she was there. She had grown up in a polygamous family, and she was highly respectful of Christine's thoughts about the rules of the family. She tried to incorporate the other wives into everything that was happening, and Christine found her to be very sweet. So over time, Christine developed an idea that it was kind of like a prophecy was coming to her and telling her that Robyn should be a part of this family. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't incredibly hard for Christine. In this chapter, she writes all about how difficult it was for her. She said it was like torture watching your husband fall in love with another woman. She went to Kody about it, and he was very kind to her. He actually ended up paying her a little bit more attention and saying, I'm so grateful that you're open with me about how you feel. And Christine felt supported in the very beginning. She was pregnant with Truly at this point in time, so she was emotional, and they were getting ready to start the show. Eventually, everyone fell in love with her. Christine does say that she really fell in love with Robyn's kids, who were similar ages to their own kids. They were kind, and they were very well behaved when it comes to how they treated the other children. She felt that Robyn really understood that it was important to include the other sister wives, get their approval, and they were all working well together. So they invited her into the family. All of their lives were about to change in a way they could never understand because they were starting a new reality TV show. And now we move in to chapter 2, called You'll Have Some Great Home Videos. So in the beginning, Christine writes that the wives had no idea what they were in for. They were looking at it like, we're gonna have some great home videos, and maybe it'll be like a season long. But things the way that Christine ends up describing this situation is that they ended up feeling like a frog being dissected underneath a microscope. In the beginning, it was all excitement, and it created a financial windfall for them. But as the seasons went on, she definitely started to have feelings that it was changing who they were. But in 2009, the pilot was put together when they went on a camping trip and announced that Christine was pregnant with Truly. In the background, Christine's church was not happy about them doing the show. They really wanted them to downplay the role of religion in their lives, and it was important that they do so because the church was worried that it was going to bring people out to arrest the men within their group. And so Christine and Kody had to be very careful about what they said on set, although they tried to be authentic to themselves. The people who were in Christine's previous advocacy group, Principal Voices, were also really concerned about it. They did not think the show was a good idea, and Christine was kind of shocked, like, isn't that the point of our group, to bring everything to the forefront? And she ended up having to pull away from the group as well. Now, unlike what we saw on TV, the truth of the matter is that Kody and Robyn dated for 6 months before they got married. For the viewer, it probably felt more like 2 months. Christine felt jealous at times, but overall she thought that it was going to get better and it was a good decision for their family. In this chapter, Christine talks about how the first season was so completely authentic. They were open and honest, and they did not want to be scripted. They would show up not wearing TV, without cleaning their homes, and they just tried to be who they really were. This was in the first season. Now here she does point out, and I feel like this is really interesting, that Robyn was always camera ready. But she felt like, okay, this was because she and Kody were in the early stages of their relationship, and Kody liked a full face of makeup. Here, Christine goes on to describe what I think is just a horrible memory. She said before the show actually started, she, Mary, Janelle, and Robyn all went to have a photo shoot done to give to Kody as a gift, which I think is kind of weird. Like, is it a lingerie shoot? Obviously it wasn't. It was just like a normal photo shoot of 4 women. I think that's weird. But anyway, they did the photo shoot and they framed it and gave it to Kody. And the first thing he said when he opened the picture was, "Why didn't you have any makeup on, Janelle?" Janelle was the one who didn't wear makeup. "Why didn't you have any makeup on?" And Christine says, like, "I remember thinking, well, you're welcome for the gift." So once again, we have Kody displaying, like, what's important to him is what he sees on the outside. And now that he has Robyn around and she's made up all the time, I think he's being kind of rude. He's obviously being rude to his other wives. Now, according to Christine, looking back, it was authentic to Robyn and Kody to be made up, to look a certain way. That's who they were. She remembers the car, the curls, the heavily embroidered jeans. This was Kody, and he was true to himself on the film. Christine goes on to talk about the film crew from TLC, and the main point of her description of their relationship is just that they were very respectful to her and the other wives. They gave them space. They filmed a certain part of the year and then gave them time off. All of the guys were very respectful, and she enjoyed having them in her home. They also allowed the kids to choose whether or not they wanted to participate. I thought this was really interesting. And they would never do any kind of confessionals in front of the kids. They didn't want them to know like what the parents had to say behind the scenes. But in general, all of the kids wanted to participate because it was a TV show. And in the beginning, they were very excited about it. Finally, the show aired, and they were all excited. They figured that their friends and family would watch it, but maybe it would be so popular with other people. But their lives had changed in several ways, even before the show aired. And the number one way in which it changed is their budget had quote unquote loosened up. Christine writes, "The show provided a financial cushion, though we didn't know how long it would last. So we would do some things our kids had always wanted to do, like go to the lagoon, a local amusement park." But guess what else they did? Kody bought a Lexus convertible. So the car that we see in the first show was bought with the money they received from the TLC show. And it just goes to show you that Kody was all about himself back then as well. Now, for Christine, what she loved about the show was that she finally got to be an official wife. Everyone knew that she was Kody's wife, and this meant a lot to her. After watching the first season on her own, Christine did have some thoughts about how she appeared. She said that she felt like she sounded uneducated, and it was difficult for her to feel that way. And so she ended up changing like the way that she went about things. And she does say the show changed us in a lot of ways. For example, I started reading business guides and self-help books. I had always loved novels, but I wanted to improve myself. And I wanted to actively seek knowledge so that I could speak the way I wanted to present myself on TV. She found life to be more interesting once the show started, and she felt naively optimistic that things were just going to keep getting better. At that point in time, Kody had a good relationship with almost all of the kids, and she felt like he was dividing his time among everyone evenly. Everyone in the family believed that the family was the most important thing, and they were all in this together. But she ends this chapter with this statement: "But Kody didn't have a favorite wife back then." All right, so we've seen a little bit about what maybe kept Christine in the relationship with Kody. Now we're moving into the time where Robyn enters the family and things change drastically. And that brings us to the end of Christine's journey through chapters 6 to 12. The chapters where redemption, healing, and complicated sister-wife dynamics took center stage. But the story doesn't stop here. Next time, we'll step into chapter 13, where everything shifts. The moment Robyn enters the family, the balance changes, the dynamics are rewritten, and the secrets hidden in the closet take on a whole new meaning. So make sure you join me for the next video, where we open the door to the next chapter that truly changed it all.